It's time for World Politics, and we'll be talking about a number of things, including that debate that took place on yesterday between the four candidates that are trying to go up against Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump has not attended any of the debates so far, but we'll be hearing what folks thought about the performance of Vivek Ramaswamy, Mr. Christie, as well as Mr. DeSantis and Nikki Haley, and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what people's thoughts about that particular debate are and what their thoughts around how things went in that area and all along those lines. And we've got some of our regulars, including one that I'm glad to see is back with us and all along those lines, because one of the things that I was going to bring up, and I'm definitely going to be interested to see what people's thoughts are around this. And I actually brought it up on our World Edition show, which is that Kelly Jones, who has been a panelist here before, has sent me some information about how the Hispanic vote has increased in Nevada and all along those lines, and that is a swing state that the Hispanic vote may play a vital role in. And they had actually interviewed a number of people that were trying to decide whether they were going to support Trump or Biden this time around. They were part of the Hispanic community, and of course they were looking at things like their views around business, because one of the people that was interviewed was a business owner. I think he owned a restaurant there in Las Vegas, and a number of other folks were trying to find reasons that they might be supporting their candidate of choice. And we've got a candidate of choice. I'm going to bring in some of our folks on the panel. So we've got Adam Lamparello, who has been talking about the rise of the importance of the Hispanic vote on some of our shows and all along those lines. So that's part of the reason that I brought that up. But we've also got with us David Grasso, who is actually a member of that community as well. So it's definitely interesting to see what he had to say about this particular article that was sent to me by Kelly Jones and all along those lines. And we've also got one of the founders of the network, Kim Calhoun, joining us as well. And of course, we've got from over there in the West Coast, Jim Eaves, that'll be giving us some insights on what he thought. And of course, we've also got the voice from Canada, a man that does quite a few shows, almost as much as I do here, that being none other than Sasha Starr, who talks about investment, talks about chess, and definitely talks about Ukraine, Russia, and China, and all along those lines. And of course, we've got the man that does Naked at Night. That is none other than Rick Rosner, who is also a member of Mensa, and all along those lines. So we've got a very full house here, and we can definitely bring these conversations on. David, like I said, I'm glad you're back. And Adam has even brought up this notion of Trump's support in both the Hispanic and the African-American community. So I was just wondering your thoughts, because like I said, Kelly Jones, who is not here, sent me this email. I think it was either yesterday or a couple of days ago. And we were seeing that in the West Coast, there was a rising amount of participation and influx of the Hispanic community there in the West Coast. And of course, they are definitely going to impact some swing states, namely Nevada, but other ones as well. But David, you do a lot of research in this area, so I'd love to hear your thoughts around the rise of the Hispanic voting bloc.
Well, we're not a monolith. Let's start there. Over in Florida, Florida's become red because of Hispanics. And in Arizona, it's the exact opposite story. Arizona and Nevada have become more blue. And specifically, we can attribute that to a specific difference between these communities. In Nevada and in Arizona, it's more Mexican American and minorly El Salvadorian, some Central American. While in Florida, it's more Venezuelan, Cuban, Nicaraguan, which are all exile communities fleeing from far left regimes, in many cases dictatorships. And that's coloring our politics today. A lot of times when you look at successful campaigns in Florida, they're just anti-communists. Growing up in Little Havana, that's all you needed to say, and you would get the political support. So, and today, the most common ethnicity in California and Texas is Hispanic. There are more Hispanic people in California and Texas than there are white people, non-Hispanic white people. But that has a lot to do with the way we count demographically. In the future, about 1 in 4 people in America will be of Hispanic descent. Whether they're an eighth, a quarter, half is more of a debate. The same way the Irish assimilated into the population, the general population, and everyone kind of became a little bit Irish. That's what's happening today with Hispanics.
Yeah, and it's causing a freak out among conservative white people, and has been for decades, in that by sometime in the 2030s, 2040s, the white people will no longer be and again, it depends on how what counts as a white person, won't be the majority in the country. They'll be under 50%. And Latinos will be, maybe 30% at some, and Black people are at 12% now, Asians, but all the people who aren't white will add up to more than 50%.
Interesting take and everything. One of the issues that I was going to bring up, and Adam, if you got some thoughts around this, because like I said, you're the one that brought it up and everything. I'd love to hear this. But also the other thing that happened in Nevada recently was unfortunately that unfortunate shooting that took place at UNLV and all along those lines. And that will definitely even pivot to some of the conversations, because my understanding that it was supposed to be a conversation around infrastructure or something along those lines that Biden was going to be talking about when he was heading to Vegas, and he's still planning that trip to Vegas. I think it's this weekend and everything. But now with this shooting, I'm sure gun control will come up as an issue and all along those lines. So anybody wants to take a stab at this, because gun control does seem to be an issue that a lot of people are concerned about, particularly when we have these shootings almost on a regular basis. So Rick, and then anybody else that wants to jump in as well.
Conservatives are worried that guns are going to be taken away, and it's been the opposite for just about forever. That we've got 335 million Americans with close to 450 million guns. Only a third of American households are gun-holding households, where the average number of guns in each gun-holding household is about 8. So, the cows are out of the barn. The only way to fix the gun problem is some science fictional way where we make people bulletproof. Some genetic tweak that turns our skin into Kevlar.
Well, hey, the chameleon. Go ahead, Adam.
I have a solution to this problem, because there's a lot of attacks on conservatives. I noticed this panel is already off to the races attacking whites and conservatives. But I'd like to propose solutions to these problems. First, my heart goes out to the people at UNLV. That's a tragedy, and certainly I think we can all unite around that. When it comes to gun control, typically gun control doesn't work for a variety of reasons. Background checks don't work. There's too many illegal guns out there. And it's very difficult to stop people with mental illness from accessing guns to commit, crimes such as school shootings. What I would propose, if I were the president, is a complete ban on all handguns, because handguns are responsible for about 95% of murders. But I would give everyone the right to have an AR-15. That would do two things. It would reduce the murder rate, because the murder rate is primarily attributable to handguns, and would also deter people from engaging in violence, knowing that other people are armed with a weapon so deadly that if they engage in violence, it'll cost them their life. That's a solution that's going to work. Now, of course, mental health treatment is important, improving mental health treatment, but it's easy to say that and it's hard to do it, because improved mental health treatment requires compliance by the mentally ill person. And that's why mental health treatment often doesn't work. Patients don't comply with medications, follow-up visits. So here's the solution. Ban all handguns immediately. Allow people to have AR-15s. A lower murder rate and self-deterrence, because people know that if they engage in violence, they will die.
Hey, Adam, along those same lines, now this comes back to something that both me and Kim and other people have been talking about, because there is a show that we also have on this network that talks about the epidemic of bullying. Some people would say that some of the political people are bullying each other, and we might have even seen that during the campaign and during the last debate and all along those lines. But even here in North Carolina, just recently in Raleigh, North Carolina, we had not a gun violence incident, but a stabbing that also cost somebody their life as well. So how would you handle that? Because it's not just guns that are the issue. People can definitely kill people and hurt people through knives, through sticks, through a number of other things as well. So how would we handle this kind of stuff? Because what happened in Raleigh was actually a stabbing death, if I remember correctly, and all along those lines. So that it just took place. Right. And that wasn't a gun violence, that was a knife violence. So how are we going to?
Well, you're certainly correct that people are going to die through other means, but the primary method of death is via handguns. Look at Chicago, for example. So let's ban the handguns, but let's arm people with AR-15s. You would see a reduction in the crime rate, okay, and you would save lives. Now, as far as bullying goes, you mentioned bullying.
I did.
Bullying, in part, is a result of the U.S. Supreme Court's absolutely expansive view of the First Amendment, which I wholly disagree with. I think there should be a hate speech exception to the First Amendment. I think racist, sexist, homophobic slurs should be banned. I think if you stand outside of a church, like the Westboro Baptist Church did in Snyder versus Phelps, with a sign that said "God hates fags," I think that should be banned. I think responsible speech is important to the marketplace of ideas and to diversity, but irresponsible hate speech that causes trauma to marginalized communities has no place in a civilized society.
Yeah, Rick, you again, and then I think Sasha had his hand up if I saw him correctly and everything. But anybody else that wants to jump in, but Rick, go for it.
All right, so I have a partial something that would help with mental illness and guns. In almost every instance where some lunatic gets an AR-15 and shoots and kills a bunch of people, a lot of people, and often law enforcement, had knowledge that this person was waving a lot of red flags, but there wasn't enough interagency cooperation. Like nobody pulled the information together to go like visit the guy or go talk to the guy's family or investigate whether that guy had violated laws that means his gun should have been pulled. If we apply more AI, more information technology to these records to make sure you remember that 9/11 didn't have to happen if there'd been more interagency cooperation. If we can use, if AI in a medical setting, you get doctors, you remind them to wash their hands, to do all this other stuff, medical deaths go down. The same thing, if you got AI to help agencies keep track of who is potentially a mass murderer, we could catch a lot more of them ahead of time.
Well, I'll tell you something, Mark. I wrote an article for the Seton Hall Law Review in 2012 called "Why Wait Until the Crime Happens?" I think that if someone makes a threat of imminent catastrophic violence and takes any overt act in furtherance thereof, they should be arrested before the crime happens. So if the Columbine shooters go on Facebook or whatever avenue that they did to, portray, to tell what they're going to do. If Elliot Rogers at UC Santa Barbara, before he killed those women in the sorority, he had a video saying he was going to do this. Once you threaten imminent catastrophic violence, that should be a crime in of itself, and you should be arrested immediately. That's how we stop the crime before it happens.
Well, it is a crime in a lot of instances, but often the appropriate agency didn't get the information.
Hey, along those same lines, this comes back to something else that we were talking about earlier with this very historic day that is going on today, which is namely December 7th, which is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And before we started this show, I think it was you, Rick, and a couple of other people were talking about this notion, which I think is true, about how we used to band together whenever an incident would take place. I think we're seeing that even in other countries. I would argue, and I would agree with Sasha, not so much argue, but agree with Sasha, that is what happened with Ukraine. The entirety of the nation pretty much came around this notion of unifying against what they felt was the Russian invasion and the Russian threat and all along those lines. And surprisingly, and I don't know whether this was a great decision or not, we were talking earlier before the show about 9/11 and how people reacted to 9/11 and how we gathered together and how things weren't stopped after even, because I think you mentioned it, Rick, or one of you did, about how things weren't stopped after even that day that we're living infamy, Pearl Harbor. Things were still going on. People were shopping and a number of other things. And even after 9/11, as many of y'all know, I am also an event planner. And I remember that both Centerfest, which is our downtown street festival, and the Blues Festival went on literally after that day. We did honor what was going on. We acknowledged what had happened, but it was like a week later, but we went on with the event. Whereas
the president told us to do that. The president told us to go shopping, to act as if everything is normal, that they had it in hand. I guess he didn't want, the economy to get hurt. And
and then he went into Iraq and killed over 300,000 Iraqi civilians with a war that was based on false pretenses. George W. Bush is a war criminal. What he did was one of the saddest, most despicable acts in American history.
But Jim, what is your thoughts? Because like I said, I was just remembering that because literally as an event planner, I remember a number of the festivals that I'm part of are fall festivals. So after 9/11, which would have been September, they went on and continued. I think it was a week later that the Blues Festival was, and it might have been 2 weeks later that Centerfest was. But we did do acknowledgments of the horrendous act that had taken place, and we did honor those that had passed and everything. But we did, as many folks have said, continue the act of going on with life as normal as best we could.
Yeah, Mark, first I want to say that today's a special day for another reason. Happy Hanukkah to all my Jewish friends. And, I think, I'm going to go on record as being anti-white because I do think that the demographics are changing. We are seeing more and more people from different backgrounds. In California, we have a lot of Asian population, of course, and people of Spanish backgrounds. As it's like that's what the country's about: diversity, growing and accepting people from other parts. The tired, the poor, the huddled masses. That's the Statue of Liberty says, anyways. So I think it's great. I also think that I was really happy to hear that don't think of these people as just blocks because people from Cuban origins have escaped and if you just say socialism, they vote against you, and even when it's got nothing to do with socialism. So this is part of us saying things to scare people, and it works, unfortunately. And so we don't have a lot of serious thought to these types of things. But going on after a catastrophic event, but I don't know how people do it sometimes. After the shootings in Columbine and in Connecticut and the massive destructions, and I don't think the handguns aren't necessarily the problem so much as like the dog that's most likely to bite you is a golden retriever, which is a very wonderfully friendly dog. It just happens that there's more golden retrievers than there are other dogs, and people adopt more golden retrievers and have them more. So there's more incidences. That doesn't mean that I would rather have a golden retriever greet me on the street than a Doberman Pinscher. That's me. But I do think that the issue of handguns, I just don't think the solution is to arm people more. But if we are going to go down that path, I would say have shotguns, not AR-15s. Because
I got one. I'm for that.
Because people carrying a shotgun would deliver the same message. But AR-15s are in the mass shootings. Any kind of weapon that can gun down people or children at such a rapid rate has to be banned. That's my thinking on that subject. But also, when we do come out of a crisis, we want to react like the going into Iraq was a gigantic mistake, and we were lied to by Dick Cheney and others that said that they had weapons of mass destruction and blah blah blah. They got General Colin Powell, who's a hero to me, to tell us that was true, because they were telling him, and it ruined his career. And he was a real American hero as far as I was concerned. So these are very complex situations, and boiling them down to bumper sticker thoughts, never works for me. Thanks.
Yeah, speaking of bumper sticker thoughts, and I got a quick question for David, then I want to get to Kim as well and everything. But one thing that I've been seeing in society, I think we even saw it to some degree in the debate, is this notion, and you kind of alluded to it when you said that, and I agree, the Hispanic community is not a monolithic community and everything along those lines, but there's this notion of pitting one against the other. And we've even seen this, and I'll just use an example. I kind of alluded to it to Sasha earlier today, even in the African-American community, because one of the complaints that people made with gentrification is who was moving into some of the communities and starting the businesses, because you would oftentimes hear people complaining, ironically, because now there's a lot of African-Americans that are supporting this particular group, about the Arab community and the Indian community moving into the African-American community and setting up stores and enterprises and all along those lines. I can tell you that even here locally, if you go to most of our gas stations, there is a lot of owners that are of Arab descent or of African descent and all along those lines. So it does seem like we are pitting ourselves against each other, even in the minority community. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, because I do think that we sometimes get put into the situation of being pitted against each other. David?
I mean, I think we've changed the definition of what it means to be white. I mean, Adam and I am half Sicilian like Adam is over there. We were not considered white 100 years ago when my family arrived here. So, you know, a lot of these definitions are rolling and changing, and we need to kind of stop with this politics of divisiveness between liberals and conservatives, between white and non-white. We have more in common than we do, not in common. And I think it's really important to always remember that. And politics, unfortunately, is one of those activities that tends to bring out the ugliness in us. But yeah, the way we count people, we have to remember two things about the way we count people. Number one, race is made up, right? Race was literally made up to distinguish between people who could be owned and people who could not be owned in the Americas. If you look at people from ethnicities, ethnicity is a continuum, right? If you start traveling toward China from Europe, people start to look more and more Asiatic. There is no fine line between where white people stop and where Asians begin, or where Europeans stop and sub-Saharan Africans begin. It all kind of melds into each other. And then number two, we have to remember that the way we count people is based on this notion of a one-drop rule. And now it's a one-drop rule turned on its head. It used to be that if you were 1/8 Black, you were still Black. Well, now these days, if you're an eighth Hispanic, you're Hispanic forever. So no, we're not becoming a majority non-white country. This country is overwhelmingly white. It's just the way we count people, and it tends to just scare people. But no, the demographic changes that are occurring in America are not as profound as you read in the news.
I love the way
I think
to that spectrum, and thank you for bringing that point up, that we're all mixed, and really there really should be no reason to calculate this anymore. We're all humans. Just we're humans, and the only race that matters is human race. And I heard this once when I was in California, and it has really stuck in my heart very big, is that is the only race that should matter. And we need to start homing in on that. But I just want to remind you guys, this country did not originate with white man. It didn't. This country was originated with very dark man. It's my heritage. I don't look like it, but just because I don't look like it doesn't mean I'm not mixed with it. So, we need to just set all of that aside and just take a look at a person's qualities, at a person's skills and what they can do, what they offer, and what they're willing to do. That's another big factor. Just because they can do something doesn't mean that they're willing to do it or will do it. Big difference. And we need to look at that in our political races, because our political races are falling down. But I want to add something about the mass shootings. That we see this over and over, and everybody says take the guns out of the factor. And I think there'll be a better way to control things in the future. We just need to focus on it. There are solutions, but you can take the guns away from us, and you're just going to get a lot more people killed by bad people. And the kids are still going to kill kids, because we saw this last week in the school where they brought knives. I've seen where they've stabbed kids with sharp sticks. So it doesn't matter. A weapon will be made. It's the mindset, it's the mentality that we have to fix. And that's not what we're looking at. We need to be looking at the mentality. And I sit on the board of advisors at UNC Chapel Hill for the mental health research department and community excellence as well. And this is something that we really need to focus on, not taking all of these things away from us, but resetting our mindset. And Rick, I'm going to go to you for a second. I know Adam's got something to say, but Rick brought this up. I think we've all gone a little crazy since COVID. Rick?
Well, okay, I have a whole theory about that, in that, we have a bunch of very public, visible wars right now. People's driving has gone to crap. A lot more aggression. And there are more and more studies showing that the more times you get COVID, the more likely is that it'll be that you get brain damage, that there are people with Alzheimer's now in their 20s who've had, because they got COVID 3 times. And what I wonder is, right at the end of World War I, there was this flu epidemic that we know affected people's brains in a lot of cases. Most of the world got it. And within the 20 years after that epidemic, we had the rise of fascism, Italy, Germany, Japan. We had a depression, and about 20 years after World War I, we had World War II. I'm wondering if the flu back then made people dumber and more aggressive and led to all the horrible stuff in the 30s and 40s. And I'm wondering if we're being made dumber and more aggressive by COVID.
Who knows?
Adam had something to say.
Yeah, Adam, it's your turn.
There's a lot to unpack here, so I'll do it as quickly as possible, hopefully under 30 seconds. When it comes to gun control, handguns are what are killing 95% of Americans who are victims of violence. Get the handguns off the streets, arm people with AR-15s or shotguns. Lower crime will result because of the deterrent effect of doing so and because handguns are off the street, okay? Now, when it comes to diversity, we have to stop looking at people as part of a racial category, okay? Diversity doesn't work unless diverse populations share a set of common underlying values. If they don't, it leads to tribal warfare and identity politics. Diversity also doesn't work, okay, when you have the people responsible for diversity, equity, inclusion primarily are the ones who are responsible for intolerance, discrimination, and exclusion. And you see this on college campuses where anti-Semitism has reared its ugly head. Now, as far as mental health treatment goes, it all sounds nice, but you're never going to improve mental health treatment because the person who is mentally ill has to want to get better. The person has to want to comply with their medication treatment, with their treatment protocols. They often don't do so, and that's why there's a problem surrounding mental health treatment. And it's not going to get better, and we need to disabuse ourselves of that notion. What we need to do, okay, if you're going to attack a problem like guns, then propose a solution. What's your solution? My solution I've already proposed. I haven't heard any other solutions. Second, stop characterizing people by their race. I heard James say that he was anti-white. I think that's appalling. And I think you should apologize. That's a racist statement. I don't buy into that crap. Okay? Everybody. Well, you can cry, but you know what? Your words have an effect on people. When you say
it was a joke, Adam.
People in
It was
Mississippi,
funny, Adam. You got to get a sense of humor, Adam.
I don't have a sense of humor.
I am a white person saying that I'm anti-white makes no sense.
I'm tired of these labels of white, liberal, conservative. This is why diversity doesn't work.
We have problems
because there's not a set of common values.
Understand someone's point.
No,
you missed the point entirely, Adam.
Jim, I would like to tell you something. There are
if I missed the point, Jim, maybe you should think it's because of the way you conveyed it, not because I misunderstood it.
I could take that for granted, Adam. It's possible, but it isn't true in this case. You missed the point, period. Sasha.
Well, hold on a second. It's Sasha's turn. So, Sasha, you had anything you want to say?
I feel like I'm in Russia.
Jim, I would like to tell you something interesting. These days, there is a proliferation of some horrible Jewish professors, believe it or not, who are openly telling people, including students, they're giving interviews, that they are against Israel, they are against Jews, and people listen to them, and some of them even tell me, oh, listen to this professor, he says that he is against Jews, he's against Israel, and so on. Now, what can I say? I agree with Adam that you don't look at the race. It means very little. Let's see if I will compare myself to some kind of a member of Proud Boys. What do I have in common with a member of Proud Boys, of Oath Keepers, or all this, Trump's electorate? Nothing at all. So although we are both hopefully the same race, or maybe we should have sub races in that effect. Okay, he's white, I'm white, but we are different white. We are not the same white. Okay, so this race business doesn't affect me at all. What surprises me, though, is that you spent half an hour on discussing the guns control and gas laws. Don't you understand what's a huge lobby, a pro-gun lobby, which operates with the tens of millions, if not billions of dollars, and they will never allow to get anywhere. The only thing what may happen, that if there will be 300, maybe even 500 shootings every day, 365 days a year, next year is going to be 366. So that may change approach to this problem. Short of that, nothing will ever change it. All you can do is try to sit home and show on the streets as little as possible. That may save you. Maybe you will live maybe a couple of extra years.
Well, Sasha, one thing I would say to you, Sasha, is this. One thing that nobody ever talks about, families. Two-parent families that instill great values in their children. 73% of African-American children grow up in single-parent families. In southern Indiana, white people grow up in single-parent families overwhelmingly, and it leads to delinquency, and it is a real problem. No one wants to talk about that. Now, as far as race goes, let me be very clear. James obviously is not a racist, okay? Obviously. What I took issue with was the word choice and defining each other based on characteristics like race or ethnicity. We're much more complex than that, and we should appreciate individuality rather than collective identity. But at the end of the day, a good family is the ticket to a better life, and a two-parent family is that.
Adam, and I'm going to get to Jim because I just see Jim's hands up and everything. But one of the things that I would argue to some degree with Sasha is I do not take issue with people that are of a group arguing against the policies of said group. So I don't think that everybody that is Jewish, as I've told you before, my basically de facto stepmother and all along those lines, because she's been together with my dad for about 25 years, is Jewish American, and she has some issues with some of the policies of Israel. So I don't think that it is wrong for her to have those opinions and everything if she has some issues with Israel. Now, she is very supportive of the Jewish community and would definitely not be considered anti-Semitic at all, and all along those lines. And ironically, and I don't know if David has heard this, but we were talking about the Proud Boys earlier, is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but isn't one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, which is supposed to be this racist organization, actually a Hispanic American? Because I've heard that one of the leaders is actually a Hispanic American that is one of the leaders of that group that is oftentimes painted as this far right white nationalist group. And I'm not saying you can't be a white nationalist and be part of a minority community, but I had heard that recently. Am I incorrect? You are a fellow journalist. I think I've heard that one of the leaders is actually a member of the Hispanic community. Am I correct?
An Afro-Latino named Enrique Tarrio, who is from South Florida. And I think, because I grew up half Italian-American, half Cuban, I want to say something really important about diversity and race. It's a balance, right? So America is about a shared idea, and we have to share our ideals. But I think it's really sad in my dad's family that they lost the language, they lost the culture, and they really don't even understand why they are, because they had so much pressure to assimilate. So I've actually seen it in action. My mom's family, because they're Cubans, and if you know Cubans, it's the number one thing is we're very proud of our heritage. We're very proud of our language. You can tell it's in your face when you go to Miami. Everyone jokes that Miami, the best thing about Miami is that it's close to America. And I think it is a balance, right? Because I don't like identity politics either, but I also don't like what happened to my Midwest family, that they just became generic milquetoast middle Americans who really don't understand where they come from. I'm the only one in the family who has any fluency in our language. I'm the only one who's made the pilgrimage home. And I am a very proud American, but I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Celebrate diversity, celebrate our differentness, but understand that we are all created equal and that we are all Americans.
No,
Diversity is important because biracial couples have very attractive offspring who grow up to be cast on the CW or on Grey's Anatomy.
Well, let me ask you, if I'm bisexual, does that mean that I'm heterosexual and homosexual? What box do I check?
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean,
That's the problem with just divvying up by race. The way to stop
Right.
discrimination on the
I've had
basis
my
of
hand
race
up
is to
for a
stop
while.
discriminating on the basis of race.
Yeah, I wanted to go
Yeah.
back to the comments about mental health. You know, it's not a question of whether or not these people want to be treated. You know, the mental health by definition means that they struggle, and so we have to show a little bit more compassion. And these people, like I had an interview with a person of working for NAMI, National Association for Mental Health, and she was very good about explaining what we can do for them. And it's not what we are doing, it's what we could do for them. So mental health is a serious crisis in the United States right now, and it's not addressed. And it's kind of like a priority way down the list, but it should be much higher because mental health is a crisis right now. And, you know, there's so many reasons for it. I won't begin to elaborate them. I'm not articulate enough to do so. But what we can do and what we are doing are two different things. And it's not that they don't want to be healthy. It's that they're mentally ill. I've worked with these people that just, you know, they forget to take their medicine. They forget their appointments. You know, we have to be a little bit more compassionate than saying something like they don't want to.
Yeah, along
with
those same
the
lines.
mentally ill and the
Hold on a second.
homeless.
Just
I
really
agree
quick.
with
Just
with
really
the
quick,
mentally
I'll
ill
give
and the
you Adam.
homeless, everybody needs a concierge. People who've studied what to do is if everybody has a dedicated person to help them negotiate the world, you can get people off the street, you can get people to be a little bit less crazy, but there's not the humanity available to do that. So in the future, again, we're going to be looking at AI help to you know, I mean, everybody in the world is stressed because of conditions in the world, also because of social media, but the same thing that stresses us, our frickin' phones can offer help, especially as our devices get smarter and we learn to kind of use them to help us negotiate our way through the world.
So a couple of things. I'm going to actually pivot this conversation just really quickly and all along those lines to another political part of it. And this has been a very robust discussion around mental health and gun control and everything. By the way, Jim, I appreciate your mentioning NAMI because way back when I served on the board of Threshold, which is an organization that deals with people that are also dealing with mental health and other issues and all along those lines. And we were a NAMI affiliate. So that was the first time I'd heard that organization mentioned here on Pod TV. So I was glad to hear you mention that very powerful national organization that is dealing in mental health and all along those lines. Like I said, that was an organization that I was on the board of here in Durham, North Carolina, up until about maybe 6 years ago. I know it was before the pandemic that I got off of that particular board. But we definitely had a great deal of respect for NAMI and all along those lines. But, you know, there was a debate, and some people would say that these folks are tilting at windmills. Maybe even Adam, our future president, thinks that they're tilting at windmills. And then some people are thinking that they are campaigning for certain jobs. I've heard that people have complained about Vivek Ramaswamy not having any foreign experience, and that he usually gets attacked for that when the debates go on. So some people are saying that in one way he's being a surrogate for Mr. Trump, but maybe he's also lobbying to be an ambassador to some country. There are some people that say that Nikki Haley has a road to victory because of some of the major donors that she's getting, even though she's way down, I think like 30 or 40 points or something like that. But there are people that are speculating that she has a road to victory, and if she doesn't have a road to victory, that she might be Trump's vice president. And definitely a lot of people, and David might have some thoughts around this, thought that DeSantis was going to come out the gates and be a very serious contender, and now it seems like he had totally dropped out of the race in terms of being a strong contender and all along those lines. And people are just expecting Christie to drop out in any moment and all along those lines. So those were the four that were at the debate. Mr. Trump, and I think wisely, because if you're ahead in a poll, or if you're ahead in any contest, you know, there's that whole notion even in basketball. If you're ahead, then you slow the game down and you find ways to maintain your lead and all along those lines. So there is probably going to be a race against and a repeat of the last election between Trump and Biden, unless something majorly changes. And already Trump is predicting that Biden will not be the candidate for the Democrats, but I don't see any traction to that and all along those lines. But I just wondered, because I did not watch the debate. I just watched the after campaign. I'm just going to be totally legitimate in terms of what I did on yesterday. I was actually concerned about my alma mater. So I watched that game and then watched the comments afterwards because I was watching Marquette against Texas. But I did follow the debate coverage afterwards and all along those lines. So does any of these candidates stand a chance? Rick, your thoughts, and anybody else?
I mean, the crazy thing is, as hateful as Trump is, he's the most likable Republican candidate. DeSantis is creepy. Ramaswamy's pretty creepy. Christie doesn't have a chance. And, Trump, he makes funny expressions. He's been an entertainer. He's been a public figure for decades. He went on Howard Stern, more than 100 times, I would guess. He knows how to speak. He makes funny expressions.
Work the crowd.
What?
To work a crowd. He knows
Yeah.
how to work a crowd.
So, he's, maybe Nikki Haley might be almost as charming, but if he's not held back by legal issues, he's going to be the nominee.
Well, the only thing I would say is I think Nikki Haley, although, she's, against Trump, for Trump, against Trump, it's a politician. However, she does represent to me what a normal Republican used to look like. Not these far right MAGA hat wearing types of Republicans, which are, more interested in chaos than they are in policy. So I think Nikki Haley is backed now by some serious money. And that's usually what talks in politics. So I think that she is going to be rising in the polls. DeSantis is going to be coming down. Whether it's enough to make a difference in Iowa and New Hampshire and in these states, I have no idea. I way beyond making predictions. But I do think that she would be something that I would think the country is reverting to normalcy if she had a chance against someone like Trump. Because we talked about, COVID making us stupid. Well, Trump didn't start this hate. Trump didn't start all this anger and aggression towards one another, but he amplified it. He poured gasoline on the fire. And so we had 4 years of hate talk and people hating each other and dividing each other up into camps that opposed one another. And so, if we have 4 more years of that, what's going to happen? Come on. We can't afford another 4 years of Trump. We have to do something differently. And I would think the GOP has got to get its act together. Of course, it's a comical farce in the Congress right now. But, I still have hopes for them. I think they just need to lose a couple more elections and then they're going to get back to some sort of normalcy. Because the old Republican Party, I had no problems with them. I didn't agree with a lot of their policies, but, they were normal. They're not now.
Well, I think James, you make a really good point. I agree with you, and I think we need to have more moderation and more compromise because what really matters in politics is the people and adopting policies that help the American people. But when we talk about all the ills affecting society, whether it's gun violence or mental illness, we never talk about the breakdown of the American family. If you want to be in the middle class, you have to get a high school diploma, don't get convicted of a crime, okay, and don't impregnate somebody before you're married. Mm-hmm. There used to be certain values that people held to that created a robust middle class. The breakdown of the family has been one of the biggest catalysts for what we see today. And the second thing is this. That debate last night was a disgrace. All 4 candidates are an embarrassment to the Republican Party. It seemed like a food fight among high school children, okay, hurling insults at each other, and I was embarrassed. And that's why I'm not a Republican.
Can I add something to that? I think that 3 men attacked Nikki quite a bit, and she was defending herself.
Vivek is a condescending loudmouth, and I have no respect for him. Of all the 4 people on the stage, I have the most respect for Nikki Haley. But the fact of the matter is,
Nikki had to defend herself.
I know that, but you know what, Kim? It's almost like entertainment TV. There's no substance. It's so unoriginal. It's like a damn soap opera. I could go watch All My Children if I wanted to do that. Trump is going to be the nominee and win in 2024. And that's what's going to happen.
No, but I did have a question. But
why not Kevin McCarthy? I like him.
I had a question for
He was moderate.
This is based on what he said earlier today and all along those lines and everything. But you mentioned about the importance of AI. I just read recently, and I don't know if Kim saw this, but here in North Carolina, they are actually going to require that in order to graduate, because in the past you had to have certain things in order to graduate, like you had to have a certain amount of foreign language or things along those lines. But because of the importance of AI, you will not be able to graduate from a North Carolina school without having at least one course in computer science. Is this something that we are going to see more of, and is this something that we should be seeing? Because
we need to, if we're going to compete with the world. We had a huge tech push in the 1960s. There was a huge push for math, science, education because the U.S. freaked out. The Russians got a satellite, Sputnik, up into orbit. And we have reaped the benefits of that math
We could
push
do that again.
with all the technology, all the tech billionaires. We need another tech push. Every kid should know how to code. Another couple things. One, we got to get Joe Biden on steroids. He walks as if he's very fragile. And there's a guy, Gary Steingart, a novelist, said on Twitter today that we need some juicy Democratic scandals, that all we have is Hunter Biden and people are bored of Hunter Biden. So we get Joe on steroids. We have him leak a vigorous sex tape. And there you go. We show we've got a healthy, vigorous dude there.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, Rick. One thing I learned from the debate last night is that my quest to go to the White House is actually a realistic goal. And when I do win, and I will win, okay, I'm going to have all of you in my cabinet, because this is the definition of diversity right here. Intelligence, diversity. I want people with different opinions, but who share a mutual respect for each other. And when I do run for the presidency, I hope people are listening, because it's about time that we have, somebody who actually cares about the people and who adopts policies that are going to help the average person who's struggling on a daily basis, because the best of us occurs when we help those who are struggling the most.
Are you running for lower office to prepare for running for the presidency?
Absolutely
I
not.
think he needs to go straight to the top.
Absolutely not. I don't want to waste my
Go
time in
straight to
Congress.
the top.
How demeaning.
Well, he's predicted that Trump is going to win and he's going to win. So I'm not sure how that.
Well, I'll tell you this,
No,
though.
this time
Democrats
Trump
would vote
wins.
for me.
He's gonna wait
I
it
would
out.
win
Wait till-
California. I'll win California and I'll win Mississippi. All right, because
And he might
Not only
even
am I
win Florida,
moderate-
but
oh please, DeSantis
he
is
might
is
be in Florida.
way over his
I-
head.
I did
I
have a
would vote for
question for you
McCarthy
about
in a heartbeat
DeSantis.
if
Why
he ran.
is DeSantis falling so sharply? Because DeSantis is in one of the states that you deal with. You deal with Florida and California. Why is DeSantis falling so rapidly?
This is a poorly kept secret for Floridians.
That's
We knew
what
his
is your theory?
popularity was falling about a year ago. So DeSantis did something really smart during the pandemic, which is that he opened really fast, right? And it turned out to be an enormously popular move that a lot of people supported. But somehow in his head, and it's really his wife, Casey, who's the extremist at home, thought that that was a mandate to carry out an agenda that really makes most Republicans, never mind independents and Democrats, uncomfortable. So he started this extreme to the right of Trump, and it really caused him to lose all his popularity.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis will go down in history as one of the biggest missed opportunities because he did have a mandate. He was very popular, and he squandered it all on this agenda that fundamentally nobody wants.
He attacked Mickey Mouse.
Well, I'll tell you, James, I have an agenda, and it's
Thank
very
you.
simple. When I become president, from day one in kindergarten, every student is going to learn to play chess and listen to classical music, and that's going to collectively up the IQ of our society and have our students become critical thinkers who know how to think instead of being told what to think.
So, I mean, of the points you've made, one of the strongest points you made is that kids in two-parent households have a huge advantage. Kids in single-parent households spend their days only listening to their siblings. Kids with, two-parent households often are better off financially. They hear adults talking. It turns out to be just huge.
But people
given
are
given the proliferation of pornography, you don't have to be lusting after your partner anymore because everybody can have a spank bank. So people should be able to stay together even if they're no longer attracted to their partner.
So are you saying, Rick, that we should ban pornography?
Now
What?
about this, I know.
So-
No,
a
I'm
lot-
saying that like when you look at the people who have sex today, it's a whole diverse population of people. When I was a kid trying to lose my virginity, only the cool people got to have sex. Now everybody gets to have
Yeah,
sex.
what is with millions of
But a lot of
Americans at
people don't
18
watch
years old having
video
unprotected sex
games.
and having children? It's ridiculous. And why does the First Amendment protect pornography?
No,
Pornography is a
sex
disgrace.
among teens is down by
But-
25%
Yeah.
since the 70s because entertainment is so much more entertaining. But when people do have sex, they don't have to be
Hold on a second.
physically
Kim had a
hot.
point
They
you
don't
want
have
to
to be-
make. Kim, if you go ahead.
Maybe they should wait until they're 30 to have
wanna
sex and get
point out
financially
that
stable first
People
and have an
are. People
education.
are.
I disagree with home
hold on a
needing
second. Kim's
both
turn.
parents. I disagree with both homes or a home needing both parents. And the reason is sometimes those people are very toxic with each other. It could be, and then it bleeds that toxic to the children. Domestic violence is very, very high right now. Over 12 million female victims, 24 million children, which, probably came because of all of the can't have an abortion issue. But I'm just saying, I get your message, but what you need is just good stability home life. I know a lot of single moms who provided amazing stability for their children, my sister being one of them. So, I mean, you just have to provide and make sure they're provided for. Good schools. You need better schools. You need to get rid of the bullies. I like the idea of, forcing them to play music instruments and chess and things like that increase the mental healthness of the children. But we don't always need both parents. It can be very toxic. I'm just saying.
Of all the factors that go into a kid's SAT score, the highest correlation is with parental income.
Thank you.
And which
I know a lot of women who could do really well if they got paid.
Two-parent families from the suburbs, okay, are two-parent families, but with values that teach their kids values, that cultivate that mindset, that have them listen to Mozart and play chess and appreciate Bobby Fischer, instead of having them play violent video games and sit on social media every day seeing how many likes they get. We are in a cultural decline, and it starts with the decline of the family.
And the K through 12.
I don't
system needs
like
to be
that angle,
overhauled.
but I agree that if you're lucky enough to have two parents who are together and who don't hate each other, you're in a much stronger position.
You're in a good position. You're in a good position if you have a 2-income family or someone who's at home all day long, and you have the male, I guess, who makes the most money. But women don't. We don't make enough money, but we're still underpaid. But I will say that for the most part, if a home is toxic with a toxic relationship, it's worse. It is far worse for the children than you would ever imagine.
So that's another place where AI could help. My wife and I have been in couples counseling once a month, not because we hate each other, but because we have excellent insurance that pays for it for more than 30 years. And so not everybody is in that position, but AI is getting better and better at counseling. And if people could couples could get in the habit of being counseled via AI, which shouldn't cost much at all, and learn how to be married to each other, how to be families, that would be huge.
Yeah, and Rick, another thing that would be huge is this. All right.
That's true.
To the young people out there, stop having sex. Get an education. Get financially stable first.
Having less sex now. People are putting off having kids.
Funny, I didn't have sex when I was in college. I didn't have sex until I was in my mid-20s. And you know what? I was financially stable. I had a damn job. I didn't commit any crimes. And I was in a position where I could be in a relationship. It's the choices you make that determine your destiny and the destiny of
Not
those.
sex, man. It's
Not
not
every man's
Adam,
like
a quick question to you,
Stop.
Adam. In certain countries, even like for example,
Jesus, all this
Germany,
sex talk.
in Germany, for example, a lot of girls are trying to provide themselves with a dowry by actually being engaged in prostitution. And how can you do prostitution without sex?
How can you do prostitution without sex? Well, of course, prostitution is a function of necessity. And I understand that.
Okay, got it.
Right? I understand that. But I'm talking about in general, for society to function at its most stable, you need two-parent families and people who are financially and emotionally stable before they start having sex and having kids. Okay?
So
That
actually,
is
Adam, it's very simple.
funny. I never had sex.
If you do sex for money, that's okay and it's understandable. Now, if you do sex for free without any money, you're a stupid idiot.
You're absolutely right, because the former example, they're doing it out of necessity. The latter example, they're doing it out of choice when they don't have the money or the career prospects or the employment stability or financial stability to achieve it. So get an education, don't have sex, get good grades, don't commit crime, get a college degree, get a job, and then you can have a relationship when you're stable enough. And don't get married till you're 30, for God's sake.
Very quick. So if you do sex for $100, it's a necessity. But if you do sex for $200, then it's something else. It's much more than necessity. And then you would be against it, right?
No, I'm not against it. If that's what our prostitutes want to do, but they are the exception, not the rule. Okay? You're talking about a very small segment of society. And you know, our society with all the social media, sex, pornography, it's disgusting. We should be educating our kids like they do in Japan. Okay? School 7 days a week, chess, okay? Classical music, reading, math, science, getting them jobs. Then you get married and have a child with your husband or your wife or your partner, and then you have the ingredients for a robust middle class and a successful society.
Adam, you should be very happy with long-term demographic trends because sex is down among young people. And people are waiting till later and later to have kids. And those trends are going to continue as lifespans continue to increase.
Well, Rick, that makes me happy.
These moralistic platitudes make me queasy. I mean, I'm exactly like you. I listen to classical music and play chess, but it's not my place to judge others. So I'm
not judging them. I'm just saying it's going to lead to bad results if you're getting someone pregnant at 16.
So snobby the way it's coming off, and it just sounds so judgmental. And yes, I am very conservative with my own, lifestyle, but other people have ways to live. That my way of living is not the universal truth, and I don't think that one variable, like people consuming a certain type of music or a certain amount of parents or a certain income level or a certain geography or a certain demographic can explain all the trends that are happening in a highly multivariate situation right now.
I think it can. But I respect your opinion.
Well, I think that there's a lot to be said about the Japanese culture. I find it very beautiful. And I, too, wanted to bring over some of their ideas because they do produce some very intelligent people, people who are very respectful. We are winding close to the end of the hour, so we'll do a little bit of a round robin. Also, want to bring up one quick point. I listened to the Federal Reserve meeting the other day, and I heard people talk about the Communist Party in the United States. So, kind of like to talk about that a little bit and what's going on there, because it sounds like a lot of our youth is becoming members of the Communist Party. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I have to tell you, that was the first I ever heard of it. So I feel really embarrassed that I didn't know anything about it. Yes, Rick.
I don't buy it. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, ranks the U.S. 25th among 200 countries in economic freedom, which is equivalent to capitalism. We far outstrip any other country of our size in the level of capitalism in our country. Republicans like to accuse Democrats of being socialists. But no, we're all pretty much, this is a capitalist country.
But Kim is talking about specifically, recently it came out, there's this heir to Cox Communications, the Atlanta-based company, who has started basically a communist, commune, we'll call it, up in Vermont, and he's converting a lot of followers and has a sizable pot of money to do so. Right now, with a lot of the pro-Palestine protests as well, you see a lot of signs from socialist and communist organizations. Of course, Rick, it's not a huge percentage of the population, but it is still present. The ideas of communism will never go away. They are very popular in intellectual circles. It's just we have yet to see a system that really practices what they preach. Yes, it's less than 5% of the population, but 5% of 300 and almost 50 million people is a lot of people.
Well, and we're going to have to say goodnight on that note. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Have a great day and great weekend. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.